Essentially, it's about structuring your ideas, understanding your audience, and making your arguments really compelling. So I'd recommend Barbara Minto's book to everyone. The build for me on that has always been this sort of concept of logos, ethos, pathos. So in terms of the way that people present, the ones who are most memorable have impeccable logic and brilliantly structured arguments. So that's the logos piece. Ethos is about literally it means ethics, but the strength of your character and how believable and trustworthy you are. So that's the ethos piece. So logos, ethos, and then the final piece of that is pathos, which is passion, right? So bringing through. Don't be afraid to show that you're passionate about what you're talking about in your working life.
G'day guys, coming up on the show today is Danny Bowerin. Danny is the Senior Marketing Strategist at Deakin University. Danny's had an extraordinary career so far with experience in some incredible organisations inside and outside of sports, such as Octagon, Deloitte, Gemba, Nielsen, as well as Golf Australia, and now our beloved Deakin University. We touch on his journey into sport, some of his closing door moments, the ins and outs of the SportsGrad and Deakin partnership, how to think like a consultant and what it's like to move to Australia from overseas for opportunities in sport. As the mastermind behind the Deakin and SportsGrad partnership, we thought it's fitting to have Danny on the podcast on his final day at Deakin as he departs to explore opportunities overseas. Plus, in huge news, Ruse has a special announcement he's been dying to share for weeks. And I can also confirm there are tears in this episode in one of the rawest pod moments in our 235 episodes to date. So let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered too.
Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry. I am Ryan Walker, and joining me in the studio is the nomadic Ruben Williams. We are two mates who met at Cricket Australia, and each week we learn how people made it in the sports industry, tease out their career decisions, their work habits, skills, and everything they do that makes them great. All so you can learn how to get in, get promoted, and get thriving in the sports industry. Rubes, how are you, mate?
G'day, Ryan. I'm doing very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to always be doing this pod with you. And a sensational episode with Danny. So
outstanding episode.
One of the great people in sport. Awesome to chat with him.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned at the top of the show, you've got a special announcement.
Yes.
Everyone currently listening is just on the edge of their seat.
Yeah. Everyone who's in the car or at the gym's hanging onto their barbells or hanging onto their steering wheel. I do have some news. Something that's been in the works for a while is I'm going travelling. I'm going overseas for about 5 or 6 months this year. From the 30th of May, I take off. And I'm going to be travelling through a bit of Asia and a bit of Europe. And just exploring the world whilst also working on the laptop. So it's going to be a bit of a change of pace for us. We'll be back to our kind of COVID routine where we did the first 150 episodes from our bedroom.
Yep.
Kind of recording after hours whilst trying to work full time at Cricket Australia and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a bit of a test for us, but we've our roots were online, so we're kind of going back to that a bit. And but then at the same time, it's a chance to go and see some sport overseas, see some podcast guests overseas. I've been chatting with a few people to say hello, catch up, do some tours of some different places. That'll be cool. And then hopefully at the same time use the opportunity to take people inside a few different sporting events around the world. So I've got my eyes on the Lords Test match at the Ashes. Got my tickets today as 1 and 2. Got accommodation booked for the Tour de France as well, and we'll see what else comes up. But
right up your alley.
Yeah, exactly right.
Brilliant.
But one of the things that I've always wanted to do ever since the start of SportsGrad was to live and work traveling around the world, and I thought better to do it earlier rather than later before things get big. So
yeah, before you settle down.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. Before it becomes too hard to do all that stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, taking the opportunity this year to go travelling and work on the laptop at the same time.
it's the start of the truly global podcast. Think about the guests. We might need to bring back the Dream Guest Challenge.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I can literally go and physically hunt them down if need be.
Knock on the door.
Yeah, that's it. So now there's a couple of people in the UK who I'm really keen to chat to when I want to get over there, and more broadly Europe. But at the same time, if you are in the UK, I am planning at holding a London meetup just around the time of the Lord's Ashes. So look out for that one. But if you are in London, you know someone in London, or if you're in Europe or know anybody over there, let me know. I'm always happy to catch up and love just being able to bounce around and meet different people.
Absolutely. And the I guess the annual pilgrimage of everyone in Australia who goes to Europe in June, July, anyone who's at uni right now, I suppose that's the thing to do. Well, it was in our day. I'm assuming it is now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let Rubes know.
If you're going to be over there too, I think Acacia, one of our staffers, is going to be over there too. So she's all over it too. But
if anyone's wanting to do a Croatia sail, just let you know.
Yeah, yep. We'll take the pod and sail Croatia. That'd be great too. But now, one of the great experiences I had during university was doing an internship with Australian University Sport, and they sent me to a conference in Montpellier in 2016. And at that conference, I met 50 young people from 50 different countries. And then in 2018, I did a round the world trip and went and visited about 10 or 12 of them in their different countries. So that kind of sparked the ambition of wanting to just travel the world and meet people who you're already connected with over there. And that's, part of the dream for the SportsGrad community too, to create this global network where we can bounce around and meet different people. So had a bit of a test run at the back end of last year and start of this year at the FIFA World Cup and in India, and was working out of a very random bedroom in Qatar during the World Cup. I think we did a podcast from there, and then was working during an Indian wedding in the forests of Kerala. So,
as rogue as it can get.
Yeah, I was in a house of about 14 people whilst their eldest son was trying to get married, and I was in their laundry trying to work away. They relabeled the laundry Ruben's office, and my girlfriend said to me, "Ruben, if you can work remotely in the forests of Kerala during an Indian wedding, then some other parts of the world should be a breeze."
I reckon you're okay. Yeah. No, it's very exciting, and for those worried, nothing's changing. It's all good. The lights are still on. It's all good at HQ. So it's a very exciting time. I can't wait to see where you go. And some of the events you're going to get to is simply incredible. So
the Discord might just get a few messages early in the morning.
Yeah, the work share channel and the events channel might be going off as well. So very exciting. All right, well, let's crack on. If you haven't already, follow us on LinkedIn. And if you want to connect with us and over 500 others working in sport, you can become a SportsGrad member today. So, Ruse, what is happening in our community at the moment?
Oh, there's plenty going on, plenty of wins, plenty of jobs, plenty of events coming up. Daniel Hughes has just got a volunteer position at the FIFA Women's World Cup. Those starting to come through, which is really exciting. Dalen Seekins has also just got a new role as the strategy data analyst at the North Melbourne Football Club. They're doing better than expected this year. And Tim Beach at Motorcycling New South Wales has just got a new role as well. Well done to you, Tim. Then some new jobs that have come up recently. If you're a graphic designer, Cricket New South Wales are on the lookout for you. And Cardinia Park Stadium, home of the Geelong Cats, they are on the hunt for a people services and systems officer. So if you're down in Geelong or want to move down to Geelong, beautiful part of the world.
It is.
Then check out that job. Otherwise, upcoming events. We've just had our job fair. That was a fantastic success. Next coming up is our speed networking night. And then Cormac Rabble. His podcast was very, very popular. I think a lot of people were really interested in how to work in events all around the world.
Yeah.
And he's coming back to join us for a Q&A. So if you want to hear from him, jump into the SportsGrad community. But if you want to stay up to date with all the jobs, all the wins, all the events, subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter and you won't miss out on a single thing.
Brilliant. Yeah, Cormac was big, and I think the amount of places he's worked as well is probably the big attraction as well. Some outstanding organisations. So looking forward to that one. Anyway, for the meantime, grab a pen, enjoy this chat with Danny Bowerin. There's a reason Deakin's sports management course attracts the greatest talent the nation has to offer. Because when you join the longest running sports management course in Australia, you'll gain access to unique opportunities with leading clubs and organisations. Their partnerships with the Geelong Footy Club, Deakin Melbourne Boomers and Netball Victoria and multiple elite industry partners will open the door to exciting placement experiences that connect you with the best athletes, managers and administrators in sport. Help shape the future of the sports industry, secure your part in the golden decade of sport. Danny, it's great to have you on the SportsGrad podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on the SportsGrad podcast.
You're one of the longest fans of the show, so it's about time that we got you in. But today's a special day because it's your last day at Deakin, and we've never chatted to anybody who is literally on their last day of work. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer. I think at any moment I'm pretty bad at working out how I'm actually feeling. So this is no different right now. I'm definitely excited about what's to come, moving to Singapore, relocating there and sort of having another fresh start. But equally, I'm really gonna miss Australia. I've been here 11 years. I've absolutely loved living and working here and working in the sports industry. It's been a really special time in my life. So I suppose it's mixed emotions, but with any new start, you have huge amounts of opportunity and freedom and flexibility in this case. So really excited about that and planning to sort of embrace the ambiguity, as they say.
Yeah, it's a hard one to know how to feel on your last day because I've had it as well, and you get all the nice notes and the nice cards, and you still kind of feel like you're a part of it, and it doesn't sink in until a week or two later. We're like, I haven't seen the same people that I work with every day for a long time now.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think that when you do leave somewhere, sometimes people say things to you that you didn't realise, and maybe you've made them feel in ways that you hadn't appreciated, and that's been incredibly rewarding over the last few days to get some of the messages I've had from around the sports industry, and it's been kind of humbling, and I've really enjoyed reading them, and I'm grateful to everyone for sending them.
It'd be nice if they came more often.
Yeah.
Why do we always wait for the last day to say all the nice things? Like, why not have a day once every 6 months where everyone shares that?
Yeah,
send me a card every now and again. Brilliant.
They actually do that really well in the Deakin marketing team. They have a sort of a kudos channel on Microsoft Teams, and people are really encouraged to make their feelings known about people who've done great work, and that actually is a real culture builder. So yeah, I think there's something in that room. But for me at this point in time, it's just been it's been a nice week on that front. I'm very grateful for it.
Beautiful.
Nice. Before we kick on, honestly, how long have you been waiting for an invite onto the show?
About 4.5 years. No, you've not been going that long, have you? No, I was actually quite terrified when Ruben asked me, to be honest. I'm really wanted to stay in the background, and it's been awesome to watch what you guys have been doing. That's what's given me the joy, and whether I'm on it or not is no big deal to me. Hopefully some people will find some useful info from me. I've had a pretty interesting and slightly different career in the sports industry across the UK and Australia. So yeah, hopefully there's a few bits and bobs in here for people.
I think you're very modest, Danny, so I think a lot of people are going to get heaps of value from this. But
totally agree. Speaking of your career, we've got a segment that we start with in every episode called Quickfire Questions.
Oh, is this the one you haven't told me about?
This is one we haven't told you. Haven't even told you about the new segment. But basically, this is how we get to know you off the bat. Quick and easy questions so people can understand where you've come from, what you do, and some interesting things about you. So I'll start off. What was your first ever job?
I was a trolley collector at Safeway supermarket in Cromer in Norfolk in the UK. I also did some work on the checkouts and stacked some shelves as well.
Brilliant.
Beautiful. And what's your favourite sporting moment?
Probably a bit controversial. I can't remember what I wrote actually thinking about in the prep for this. Certainly as a TV viewer, Richie Benaud just saying Jones and Bowden in and England finally winning the Ashes after about 18 years of hurt and basically my entire childhood of getting thumped by Australia. So that was certainly a moment. In terms of attendance in person, I've been a pretty passionate Geelong Cats fan for a fair while now, and I got to go to every finals game during last September. So being there on a sunny September afternoon, watching everyone celebrate, and having had probably an hour and a half to let it sink in that we'd finally won a premiership after all of those just desperately disappointing finals over the previous years was a pretty special moment. And yeah, really still love going to the MCG. Even now, my first ever day in Australia was actually at the MCG. I left on Christmas Eve, arrived on Boxing Day, and watched Verenda Sehwag make 190 in a day.
Wow.
In a Test match, which was pretty cool. So yeah, being at any sporting occasion at the MCG is special. But yeah, when your team finally wins a flag, it's pretty cool.
Would have made the Deakin and Geelong partnership all that more special as well. So what is your favourite interview question to ask new candidates?
I think it's probably a clarification question. So what you tend to find in interviews is that people tell stories of work that's been done as a team, and they talk about it in vague and general terms, and actually getting to the crux of what the individual has actually done and the contribution that they've made to the team or to the piece of work is really important, and it can trip people up because they've sort of co-opted themselves or slightly enhanced stories in order to get to an interview. So I think it's important to be authentic in interviews and be honest about what you've really done and the contribution that you've made, and not to go too far on the story enhancement side of things, which can happen.
Yeah, I can really find some people out and dig into what's actually going on.
Yeah.
You're a very smart man. You have come across very well read. Is there a particular book or podcast that you recommend to people that's helped you at work?
My favourite podcast in this environment is Unofficial Partner, which is Richard Gillis's podcast. It's run out of the UK but explores the business of sport. I find it really keeps me on my toes and helps me to stay in touch with some of the the challenges and the new developments in the sport industry. And I like the way Richard does his work as well. He's pretty humble, but he knows his stuff as well, and he sort of goes low status with people and actually sometimes gets them to trip themselves up, I think, with some of the language that they use and perhaps the lack of precision on occasion. It's a superb podcast, and I'd really recommend that anybody that wants to work in the sports industry, whether you're interested in participation or the broadcast side of things, or engaging fans, etc. It's kind of got all of those dimensions covered. So it's a great listen.
Nice. Now I know you hit off. Is it 6 in golf? I know you're a hiker as well.
Well, yeah, my golf handicap keeps going up, and well, I've actually to the point that I've pretty much stopped playing competitions because I'm so crap these days. But yeah, it's probably still about 6. But yeah, I was off 3 for a bunch of years when I used to be able to play.
Well, what I was going with that is whether you're involved in any grassroots sporting clubs, because I know you're very good at golf. Whether you're working grassroots golf, or how does that look for you?
Yeah, my involvement with golf was mainly professional, working for Golf Australia, and I'm sure we'll come on to that. But when I first moved to Melbourne, I got involved in parkrun, which is one of the best, I think, participation in grassroots. One of the best participation and grassroots initiatives around the world, and sneakily probably has the best data set of any sports organisation in the world as well. Whether it's being brilliantly used or not is probably a separate question, but it's an amazing program. It's so inclusive, and I've volunteered a bunch at Albert Park Parkrun, and also was run director on one occasion. I think I managed to drop all the finishing tokens and wasn't asked to do it again. But the days when I was first in Melbourne, we were desperately trying to get to 100 participants. That was our kind of big goal. And now they're getting 700-800 people at 8 o'clock every Saturday morning. And Scott and Joanne Watkins, who've done the work there, just absolute pillars of the community and amazing people who've done a power of work there. So yeah, I remember doing a presentation at Gemba in 2013, I think, talking about parkrun and trying to explain to people how amazing it is and how big I thought it was going to be. And I'm not one for told you so's, but it really has kicked on. It's a global phenomenon. It's also bounced back really well from some difficult times during the pandemic.
It is a phenomenal concept, because I know my mum's really into parkrun, and she's got friends who will boast about their their shirt that's got 100 park runs on it, or 250 park runs, or some people who are trying to do the park run alphabet, where they go to a race location starting with every letter of the alphabet, or a global park run, tick off every continent. Like it's crazy what that community is doing.
Yeah, park run tourism is a real thing, and probably the best T-shirts are the people who've got the volunteering T-shirts with 25, 50 volunteering occasions. I think celebrating volunteerism is something that parkrun does better than pretty much any other sports organisation in Australia, certainly, and probably around the world. So, yeah, although it's as it's grown, my main frame of reference, Albert Park, as it's grown, it's become a much bigger operation. But the way that they effectively train a whole team of volunteers within a matter of minutes between 7 and 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning every week is pretty impressive, and it's actually worth getting Scott Watkins, who's the chair of Parkrun Australia. You should get him on the pod. Actually, Scott's an amazing person. He's done a brilliant job there.
Awesome.
He'd be listening.
We'll have to chase him up. Yeah.
He will be if I ask him. Just let me know the time code so he doesn't have to listen to the rest of it.
Nice. And if you had 30 minutes to pick someone's brain, who would it be?
I guess I was lucky enough to see him at John Cain Arena about 2 weeks ago. So Barack Obama, I think the world misses his intellect and his calm. He's someone I'd love to spend half an hour picking his brains. I don't think his presidency was flawless, but as a statesman, as a communicator, and as a campaigner, and someone whose values align with mine, he was and remains an inspiration. And it would be an amazing thing to spend some time with him.
Nice.
Great answer. Funnily enough, I had coffee this morning with the venue manager of John Cain Arena, who was putting on the Obama event. And he was telling me some incredible stories, which might actually be good to get Kerry back on to tell them. But he did walk away with a basketball signed by Obama, which now sits in the Melbourne Olympic Park's office. So
wow.
He said the whole thing was a career highlight for him too. So
absolutely, yeah. It was quite. I might reflect on it a bit in a later answer. It was very interesting listening to him, but it was very controlled. The actual session. Julie Bishop did a great job of facilitating, but it was it probably lacked a little bit of the passion that you see from him when he's sort of in campaign mode or really focused on domestic issues or grappling with some of the challenges over there. But it was still enlightening to see him in person, and it's probably the only time I ever will. So I'm really glad I took the opportunity.
Sounds like he's mellowed out in his old age.
Yeah.
He certainly seemed very mellow, but I suspect that as we lead into 2024, some of that mellowness might dissipate, and he might be back into fired up, ready to go mode.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which we love. All right, let's crack into your career now. Can you walk us through some of the series of qualifications and jobs, experiences that have led you to be the senior marketing strategist at Deakin Uni?
Yeah, I guess when I used to get asked this question, or it feels very recent, I would be worried about trying to pad it out, whereas I kind of now look at it and realise that I'm sort of more than 2 decades into my career, and 15 of those have been in and around the sports industry. So I'll try and keep it brief. But so my uni life was in St Andrews in Scotland, which is an incredible place to go, and some of my lifelong friends are from there, and I studied management, so essentially a business degree. I have a first class honours degree from there, so I'm not sure what that says about 18 to 21-year-old Danny, but I can promise you I did have some fun as well. I played first team football there and played second team golf, and just I love the place. It's still one of the most special places in my life, and I love going back. My initial foray into professional life was with PA Consulting, primarily as a management consultant, and I'm incredibly grateful for that grounding. It was the training that we received, as graduates, was incredible. Learning to work on lots of different projects, deal with different clients and stakeholders, deal with ambiguity, be a problem solver, communicate effectively in writing and in person. Those skills I hope have stayed with me. I'm not sure they've all survived the pandemic, but they were certainly incredible as a grounding for a career. I worked on all sorts of projects there, from deregulating the electricity market in Singapore. I worked for the NHS in Scotland, New South Wales Health. I worked for BP and BT and Pfizer. So a whole bunch of different clients. Worked on a training program that I delivered to 500 people in the Department of Health in the UK, and worked on a really significant project in the sort of in and around the criminal justice system in the UK, which was about how the system as a whole dealt with problem drug users. So that meant working across prisons, courts, police, probation, and then also drug treatment providers. It was really complicated and emotive areas, and very difficult to join up the way that different organisations worked, and really, again, provided me with amazing grounding for my future career. I guess from a sport industry perspective, my transition happened when I went on sabbatical from PA. So I'd been doing really well. I'd had a few promotions and was kind of on the treadmill, I suppose, as a management consultant, and starting to get those conversations around what you might achieve in this organisation and where you might get to. But I'd probably always had this sense of really wanting to work in sport, and I didn't really know, honestly, how to do that. So for those of you that are listening who are 21, I still didn't know when I was sort of 25, 26, how to get into the sports industry, and I ended up applying to Octagon, the sport and entertainment agency, the UK business there, for an account manager role. And
wonderfully led by Joel Seymour Hyde, who you introduced us to, who sits back in episode 99, I believe. So that's where it all comes from.
That's encyclopedic knowledge, if ever I had. But yeah, I mean, I was probably going to mention that anyway. Joel, in a way, is kind of one of my little mini claims to fame. The fact that my colleague Matt Hales and I recruited Joel, and Joel's a genuine industry leader in sport, and a stand-up bloke to boot. So I kind of have a weird sense of pride at seeing what Joel's doing and the impact he's having on the industry. And he's a thought leader and really very, very well regarded in the industry. So yeah, he was part of, or that recruitment, if you like, was part of the work that I ended up doing. So I wasn't offered the account manager role. I was offered a role that was titled business development director, but was really a kind of an offsider to the CEO type role. And the agency at the time wasn't doing particularly well financially, and it was kind of a mini business turnaround. So we worked on all of the foundational stuff for the agency, so vision, values, stretch goals, embedding business development disciplines, embedding insights and thought leadership and marketing disciplines into the organisation, and putting the building blocks in place to enable it to ultimately. What happened was the GFC came, and the organisation found its way through that successfully, and with Joel and others sort of at the helm over the last sort of 10 or 15 years, it's in rude health these days. So whilst I wouldn't claim too much credit for any of that, I think some of the work that we did was really important and foundational. So my next step from a significant step in the sports industry was working for Deloitte UK on its London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games sponsorship program. Deloitte recently actually was announced as a top partner, so a partner of the IOC and the IPC, 10 years or so on from the work that we were doing for the UK firm. So I guess in those days, the UK firm was in its early days of understanding the value of being the official professional services provider to an Olympic and Paralympic Games. And just to give you an idea of what that means, and this is probably a podcast in itself, but I'll do the quick version. So 750,000 head hours of Deloitte people's time contributed to the delivery of the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. So if ever anybody talks to you about value in kind in sponsorship, that's about as big and important as it gets, and
wow.
and some incredible expertise that was provided. I remember receiving my colleague Mel receiving a job description for a hostile vehicle mitigation specialist and not having a clue what that meant, and let alone thinking that we might have any in the Deloitte UK firm. And we got 4 applications. It's about stopping vehicles loaded with bombs driving into a major event. in case you wondered what the actual words meant, but it's the amount of people's time and the quality of work that was done by the UK firm of Deloitte on those games was awesome. But our job was on the other side of it as the sponsorship activation team, and we did it all in house. And we had 4 pillars: our people, which was about employee engagement and internal communications; our clients, which was about telling the stories of all the work we were doing to our clients, as almost like the ultimate case study of Deloitte's work. Our community, which was primarily focused on helping people from grassroots through to elite performance in Paralympic sport and parasport. And then our firm, which was about the sort of PR and external facing storytelling around the UK firm's involvement with the games. So we had a very small team, but a brilliant team, and a bunch of people who've gone on to great things since. And Annabelle Rake, who was the sponsorship director at the time, is the global head of Deloitte's program with the Olympic and Paralympic games globally now. So it was a superb team, and yeah, we had very little agency support, worked hard, and was an awesome time of my life. But it sort of became it led into one of the biggest sort of sliding doors moments for me, I suppose. I had the opportunity either to stay with Deloitte and in the UK and see that through and be there at games time and see the culmination of all the work that we'd done, or they just offered me a transfer to the Australian firm, which was not in a sport role, but it was in a more general national marketing role for Deloitte. So it was a difficult decision to make. I don't regret for 1 second deciding to come to Australia and not quite being able to see all of our work come to fruition. My one regret is I wish I'd negotiated going back to the UK for games time. And with hindsight, I was a little bit too grateful, I think, for the opportunity. Coming to Australia and living and working had been something I'd always wanted to do. And I wasn't really prepared in any way to put that at risk. So just sort of nodded and smiled and signed everything and said yes, and thought, well, it would be a bad look to say, oh, by the way, can I go back to the UK in July and be part of the games time team, or even just to see it and experience it for myself. So I also probably didn't realise at the time how much of a high watermark for the UK in general those games were. It's not been an amazing story since then. So I do wish I'd gone back, but there's no point looking backwards. And I've had an amazing sort of life and professional set of experiences in Australia since then, which started with Deloitte, but then relatively quickly went to work for Gemba, and probably a good example of some of the things that you talk about on this podcast regularly, which was, in some ways that came about because I'd made the effort to reach out to contacts and to let Rob Mills know that I was moving to Australia. And so when a role came up, I got the opportunity to apply for it and was successful. So that next period of probably 3 years of my career was very sort of sponsorship strategy focused. So I took a lot of the work that I'd done with Deloitte in the UK and worked with a number of big brands in Australia, helping them to be really clear about why they were investing in sport and entertainment, i.e. what the purpose was, helping them to select the right sponsorship properties or assets, depending on your preferred language, and then working on bringing those to life and measuring the impact of them. So that included a lot of work with Gemba, with organisations like Mondelez International, Puma, NAB, ANZ, Origin, and a bunch of others, and then TAL, the insurance company, in-house there for a while as well, before I transitioned on to Nielsen Sports, where my focus kind of shifted more to working for sports organisations rather than for brands. I worked on a lot of participation and commercial related projects. Worked on a really important foundational project for the Australian Sports Commission around women in sport and the opportunity there, which was sort of back in 2014-15, and it's pretty cool to see how the world's changed since then. But also worked with Netball Australia, Touch Football Australia, Golf Australia, via the Australian Golf Industry Council, where we won some work, and ultimately was offered the opportunity to be Golf Australia's first marketing director in 2016, and that role was really focused on participation and gender equity initiatives. So worked on My Golf, the junior program, trying to, I guess, align the industry around a national junior program, get as many clubs and facilities on board as possible, and help them. So that's almost like the B2B side of things, and then also help them with the consumer marketing side of things as well. So we managed to double participation in that program during my time there, and I played a really significant role in shaping and launching Vision 2025, which is the golf industry's approach to transforming the sport for women and girls. And for most people listening will have a certain set of perceptions around golf as a sport, and a lot of them were probably right at the time, and some of them will still be true, but it is on a good path, and I'm really proud of the part that I played in that. All that said, without Shiloh Curtis coming on board and as the female engagement senior manager and driving that agenda, operationalizing that vision, identifying heroes and case studies, and working directly with clubs and facilities and the state sporting organisations, it would have just been words on a page. So was proud to launch it and to play such an important part in developing it. But the hard yards was done by Shiloh and others that have followed her. And last but not least, that sort of brings us to the modern day Danny, or the current time, or whatever you want to call it. I've been at Deakin for about 4.5 years. It's been a great opportunity to extend my support for and commitment to gender equity in sport. It's something that I'm genuinely passionate about and believe very strongly in. Our partnerships are reflective of the organisation's commitment to that, and so that's been a great joy to be part of, but also bringing to bear hopefully some of the skills that I've acquired through all of those previous roles that I've mentioned. So sponsorship, strategy, some of the creative and campaigns and comms, and also the commercial side of things, making sure that at the moment I'm working on negotiating a new agreement with an existing commercial partner, and I might talk a bit more about that later, but that's just an example of the type of work that I've been able to do. And sport is what Deakin's best at and what it's most famous for, and it's been an enjoyable 4.5 years working with some brilliant academics who are genuine experts in their area.
Amazing. I reckon most people would be happy to do any one of those things in their lifetime. I think one thing that stands out is that very early on you had that option to go down the management consulting path, and as you say, the partners are probably laying out a plan for you to become a partner in 20 odd years as well. Don't go anywhere, you've got everything you need right here, but you've been courageous enough to follow what you genuinely care about and have made an impact on at every single stage, which is a great example for people to follow, I think.
Thanks. It's difficult. I think you have to. Well, sorry, you don't have to, but I think one real option in life is to follow your passion and to try to make a difference in areas that you genuinely care about. And we might talk a bit more about the sports industry in that context later on. But yeah, there was a fairly standard pathway available to me, and I think I'm told I was reasonably good at that job, and the prospects were pretty strong. But it wasn't probably floating my boat as much as I would like, and also it's nice to sleep in your own bed once in a while. I had enough of trains to Newcastle at 5:30 in the morning on a Monday, and coming back on Friday afternoon or whatever, and just being home at weekends. And it can be a tough life. Depends on what project you get where. I also got to work in Singapore. So yeah.
Amazing. Exactly. I love how you were also able to double participation. I suspect around the same time that you halved your handicap as well. Yeah. So some good impacts made at Golf Australia. Yeah. But I want to dive into, whilst it all sounds amazing and you've done so much in that time, I want to ask about a period where you're at a bit of a crossroads where your role was made redundant. I'm interested in how did you bounce back and navigate that situation?
Yeah, it's a moment in my life that really still conjures up. It's pretty evocative, and I remember it very vividly. Not just because of my role being made redundant, but some of the circumstances that surrounded it. So, I was working for an agency and loving working there and going really well, and I'd just been paid performance bonus, and the organisation was sponsoring my permanent residency, and all was great with the world. I'd been in Australia for a couple of years and just loving life, and some circumstances in the sports industry and some ownership changes at that organisation meant that a bunch of roles were made redundant, and so in a heartbeat, I'd sort of gone from life couldn't be better to at the same time I actually really hurt my back as well. So my role was made redundant. My back was not in a great spot, shall we say, for podcast ears.
Too much golf.
Yeah, it was actually too much running at the time, but that's another story. So my back was in a bad way. I'd lost my job effectively, and because I was on a 457 visa at the time, I only had 90 days to find a new role. Otherwise, I would have had to go back to the UK. Let's just say I diplomatically would prefer to have stayed in Australia. The UK wasn't hugely attractive to me at the time, and even less so these days. So it was one of those situations where you can either let it overcome you and you can just sort of curl up in a ball, or you can what's the saying, just make your bed and get up and deal with what's in front of you. And I'm pretty proud of the way I bounced back from that experience. It was heartbreaking, genuinely heartbreaking, and also it was a difficult time, physically and mentally to get through. I'm lucky that the right role popped up, and I managed to interview well, and I found somebody actually I think the person that recruited me had actually was not too far out of a similar experience himself, and was building a team. And so I think he saw a little bit of his experience in me, but also I'm lucky enough that he sort of recognised hopefully my skills and capabilities and wanted to employ me. So I'm grateful to Michael, but he knows that. I've tried not to look back since, but those experiences can make or break you. And look, life would have been fine if I'd had to go back to the UK. I would have managed, and I'm in a privileged position in my life, and I wouldn't like to kind of paint it as the most difficult thing anybody's ever experienced. But when you've lost your job, it looks like you've got to go back to a country that you've deliberately moved away from, and your back's not very good. It does feel a bit like a cluster, So
yeah, no, totally fair. You don't want to feel like you got to take your medicine and tail between the legs and go home. So
I think it could have felt like that. Yeah, I mean, that would have been a separate thing to get over. But actually, I think people are pretty kind in general, and people don't. That's the kind of thing you can project onto other people, and actually they rarely think that way.
You're probably thinking about it, but no one else is.
Correct. Yeah, and it's the age old. You worry much less about what people thought of you if you realise how rarely they do.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally.
Absolutely.
Totally.
But that 90 days is a real burning pressure, like a real sense of urgency to actually do something.
Oh, it was exactly that, and I don't know if in hindsight maybe that was a good thing, because it crystallized the situation. It meant there was only one way to go with it, really. It was go all in and try and resurrect the life that I'd spent a couple of years building, or just to sort of roll over and play dead. And without overstating it, I'm really proud of the fact that I managed to find my way through that. And I'm grateful for everything that's come since then.
So despite that tough period, you're able to stay in Australia and been here for the last 11 years. What have been some of the projects over that time that you've been most proud of across the journey?
I've certainly mentioned one, which was Vision 2025. Hat tip to Marilee Barnes, who worked at the Sports Commission at the time, for being a great catalyst for that work. But it's not often that you do a piece of work and, sort of 5 years later, 6 years later even, you're sort of still seeing the benefits, and you see it in the sport that you love. You see the experiences starting to change for women and girls in the sport that, I played golf since I was 13. I don't want it to be I don't want it to be patriarchal. I don't want it to be male dominated. I want it to be inclusive and welcoming for everybody. And it is more so now than it used to be. It's still got a long way to go. But to have done the work that I did on that, it is a source of pride, and mindful of not being too proud. It's not a great feature to have in our world, but if pushed, then I'm certainly proud of that. The brand refresh work that I did at Gemba is still in market and still looks great in my opinion. So
great logo.
Yeah, and it's very simple the way that it's presented. It doesn't waste any words. That sport full stop, entertainment full stop. Like that's what we're about. Or at the time that's what the organisation is about, and it's authoritative, which is what the organisation seeks to be. So I'm really proud of that work. The other one that I'm really proud of is the small part that I played in getting the Deakin Melbourne Boomers documentary over the line. So again, my role is small but hopefully significant. Christy Collier-Hill, who's now head of the WNBL, was the driving force behind it. But I think I played a role in helping Christy to shape the thinking, and was able to provide some funding via Deakin to make that happen, and was involved in some early sort of producer meetings to shape what that could look like. And for those of you that haven't seen it, it's called Sidelined, the battle for equality in women's basketball. It's a superb piece of content. It's 4 sort of 45, 50-minute eps. It's available on SBS On Demand. It tackles issues of racism. It tackles issues around gender inequality, and it gets behind the scenes in a way that very few sports documentaries have done. And it's reflective of the trust that Adam McKay built with the team, and also reflective of a superb group of human beings that were part of that team that won the championship in 2021-22, coming out of COVID and dealing with all sorts. And it also tells the story of Carly Ernst, who came back into the WNBL 4 months after having her baby, and shot a lot of 3-pointers and played an important role in that championship win. So Adam McKay is the man that did all the real work, but I think the little part that I played in helping to get that off the ground and to help shape the thinking and some of the likely narrative that would emerge during the season is something that it's pretty cool when you see something you've seen and been part of from inception actually on your screens, and you sort of the guy that's done it, and you know how hard he's worked and how brilliant he is at his craft, and Adam deserves 100 times as many people to have seen that documentary. And it's a shame that it's so difficult to make money in sports content at the moment outside of the absolutely top sports, and that we're trying to cut through in a world where there's so much content, because I'm slightly biased, but that is a stupendous piece of work, and it really will stand the test of time in my view.
And the Boomers, with things like these pieces of work, it starts to gather momentum around the team. And Ryan and I went to a game recently, and you go into the atmosphere there, and people absolutely go nuts for the team. It's incredible when you walk into that tight stadium, and the activations that they've got with the kids on the court, and what is his name? The Dragons conga line.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. There's a bunch of activation there that's kind of unique, but works for the audience. Wouldn't necessarily come out of a big sort of creative agency or anything like that, but it's part of the family experience. And to your point, again, mostly through the work that Adam's done from a marketing and digital and content perspective. The last sort of 12 to 18 months, they've transformed the club, I think, in terms of its external perceptions and the way that the fans engage, the demand for tickets, the atmosphere at games, and they've really set the bar for the WNBL as a whole, and arguably for a whole bigger set of sporting leagues than that. I think it's Adams to be hugely commended for it, and as you say, it is a great experience going to watch them. And it's one of the top 3 or 4 leagues in the world, and you see a bunch of players who are going to play and probably dominate in the WNBA very soon. And seeing someone like Kayla George return to the WNBA after 5 years out is testament to the quality of the WNBL and also her longevity and quality. So it's a good league. It's really enjoyable to watch. There's some broadcast challenges that need to be resolved, and Christy's got that to try and improve. But it's a fantastic product, and hopefully it will go from strength to strength, because participation in basketball is certainly going through the roof at the moment.
Very good. Now this is going to sound like a very self-centered question, but we do have a bunch of members and listeners who are becoming commercial curious, so to say. They're starting to dip into the world of sports business and look at the big partnerships in sport. And then they look back at SportsGrad and they look at the partnership that we have at Deakin and they ask, what is that and how did it come about? So on behalf of those guys, you're the person who is the reason why Deakin and SportsGrad have the partnership that we do. So from your perspective, firstly, how did you come across the podcast and what benefit did you see in it for Deakin University?
Yeah, this isn't a plant question, but unfortunately, I have to give Ruben the answer that he wants, which is I saw it on LinkedIn, and I genuinely did.
Yes, that's brilliant.
So I watched some of the early posts and saw the work you were doing, had a look at who you were and where you come from, and had tried to understand what it was before I called you. And I think I literally just phoned you and said, hey, I'm Danny, I work at Deakin. I'm really interested in what you're doing. Can we talk about, some opportunities that might exist for us to get involved in the podcast? So, look, I think there's probably a few elements to it. The first one is that, and Professor David Shilbury, who heads up the Deakin Sport Network, would probably emphasise this element. We wanted to support you. You're a Deakin alum. You were doing great work, and there was an element of this guy deserves some support. He's doing some excellent work, and it's highly relevant to us and the key messages and the image that we want to present to the world. So there was a small part of that, but more importantly, I think there's a shared insight there, which is passion for sport. It does not equal an understanding of what the industry is, what it has to offer, or what the roles might be now or in the future. So we felt that you were genuinely addressing a gap in the market and also addressing a gap that certainly many people would perceive that universities aren't as good as they could be at the employability side, the practical real world stuff, if you like. And you were delving into that in depth, and you were having the right conversations that would help to power the next generation of sport leaders, which is what we're all about. The other dimension to it is the audience, which is, we would like your audience to think that Deakin is a good place to help them take the next step in their sport industry journey. So you've got a bunch of people who've already graduated who might want to do a master's course to help them help elevate their careers to the next level, for example. So that's a part of it as well. But it's not purely a recruitment piece. It's as much of a positioning piece as anything else. So there's no one simple answer to it. It's a combination of factors. The one thing I would say is, from a personal point of view, I still think it's exactly the right place for us to be. We're really proud of the work that you guys are doing. We're proud to be part of it, and we know that it's making a difference to the sport industry because people are finding jobs and hitting the ground running and understanding the industry better than they have done previously. And so that's a great thing for Deakin to be part of.
Amazing. And it opens up some really fun and just interesting opportunities for us as well at Deakin University to come in and chat. So it's to feel quite integrated in what's going on there. It has been a joy to be a part of, let alone the fact that, without that sponsorship in the early days, we literally wouldn't be here. So I think
that's a good thing.
Yeah. So you came to us when we were literally recording in our bedrooms, and now this is obviously not our bedroom.
Hopefully not, otherwise I've stumbled into the wrong place.
Yeah. But without that support, we don't elevate from outside of the Zoom sessions from our homes into a proper studio. So we have super appreciated it, and it's been a lot of fun as well getting into campus when we can.
Yeah, I've kind of felt like, because I didn't go to Deakin, I think most people know that, but I feel like I did. Is that weird to say? Like, I feel like I tour to Deakin, I go to Deakin all the time. And
you can keep going. It's fine. Yeah. We can cut this up. And
But that's been the super fun thing for me as well. Because, Ruse is obviously very well versed with how Deakin runs, but I've kind of been brought into the tent, which has been really enjoyable for me. And you kind of feel like one of the students when you go there and you meet everybody and whatnot. So
what people I think don't understand is that sport means such different things to different people within our organisation. You know, we've got 250 elite athletes studying with us who are balancing their sporting careers with their studies. We've got all of our sports facilities. We've got all of our DUSA clubs that compete, and we've got Deakin Active, all of the gyms and physical activity facilities, plus all of our partnerships, our Women in Sport and Exercise group of academics, the Deakin Sport Network more broadly. And it is a multifaceted thing, and sport to any individual at Deakin has a certain set of connotations, but they're different for different stakeholders. So a view on health and physical activity that sits in our Institute of Physical Activity and Nutrition is different from our sports science team, who think about it in a completely different way, and it means different things to a sport management professor who is helping people to understand the difference between grassroots and pathways and participation and elite sport. So it's important, I think, for people who are interested in sport to understand all those different dimensions and not just want to work in sport. Which bit of sport do you want to work in? What is it that you want to do in sport, and what difference do you want to make?
Absolutely.
So it's been 2 years. We're into a third, which is very exciting. Has it made a difference to the university, and what's been that impact in your perspective?
Yeah, look, attributability is a really difficult one when it comes to sponsorships, and this isn't I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone to know that we're not spending millions on this sponsorship. So
what?
What do you mean?
So
I thought you said $1 million for the third year. What are you talking about?
But I think that means the amount that you spend on measurement is generally commensurate with the amount that you're spending on the sponsorship. So I think this one has to be about, as much as anything, about just understanding the level of engagement, listenership, and the impact that it's having on people's job opportunities and their understanding of the sports industry. Yes, we want as many Deakin students as possible to be benefiting from that, but also a better, healthier, stronger sport industry is ultimately better for the leaders in sport education, right? So if we're doing a good job of creating and improving the sports industry and getting more and better people into it, then that's a good thing for us in the long term as well. So I guess the simple answer is I'm confident it is. Could I point to anything other than the numbers that you would provide us in terms of jobs through SportsGrad and listenership and engagement on socials? No, but I'm comfortable with that. I don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars trying to prove that a relatively small sponsorship is a good addition to our portfolio. It undoubtedly is. I'm really, really happy with all the work that we've done together, and this year particularly loving some of the ways in which we're presenting content, and I'm at risk of being a boomer in this space, but the shorter form, slightly more raw content that helps people to really get a sense of the industry and that cuts through that sort of the challenges of the attention economy that we're dealing with, and it's really engaging for your audience. So it unfortunately won't be my decision how long this partnership runs, but you should certainly be proud of all the work you've done, and it absolutely has been a great addition to the Deakin portfolio.
Don't worry, you don't sound like a boomer at all. We had Brian Taylor come in here, and he was trying to say the word Instagram, and instead he said online processes. We were like, are you talking about Instagram? He goes, yeah. That's the one. So
I can probably beat that, but there's definitely a risk of being
processes.
Yeah. But we were literally chatting the other day about what's the impact that SportsGrad creates, and we see it very similar. We're trying to help the people who are powering sport, and if you can lift up the people powering sport, then sport has the influence on the rest of the world. And so I think that's why it's such a good fit, because you guys ultimately have that same sort of purpose as well. So
absolutely, and as I'm sort of on my way out the door, I can say things like I think Deakin should lean more into the things that it's best at and famous for. The university sector is in Australia is probably not always as good at that sort of differentiation as it could be. That there's a lot of institutions that can look and feel quite similar. And I think as a marketer, I think what we're best at and most famous for, and where we're making the biggest difference is something that we should continue to lean into. And I think, obviously, I'm biased, but I think more so.
Brilliant. Dan, you've been around strategy development for a long, long time now. I believe this is probably something you developed back in your early consulting years, but we'd love you to teach us a little about the concept of pyramid thinking. For those who have never heard of it before, what does it involve and how do you use it?
Barbara Minto would be probably a bit annoyed about me claiming to have developed it, but
you came up with it.
No, I wish I'd be a lot richer than I am. But pyramid thinking was developed by Barbara Minto, and there's a book of the same name that you can grab, and I'd highly recommend it. I don't think I can squeeze in a training session into a small section of a podcast, but it is a wonderful tool. PA Consulting, where I spent the first 6 years of my career, it was known as top-down thinking, and it was really the shared language. It shaped everything we did, from client presentations to websites to emails. Essentially, it's about structuring your ideas, understanding your audience, and making your arguments really compelling. So I'd recommend Barbara Minto's book to everyone. The build for me on that has always been this sort of concept of logos, ethos, pathos. So in terms of the way that people present, the ones who are most memorable have impeccable logic and brilliantly structured arguments. So that's the logos piece. Ethos is about literally it means ethics, but the strength of your character and how believable and trustworthy you are. So that's the ethos piece. So logos, ethos, and then the final piece of that is pathos, which is passion, right? So bringing through. Don't be afraid to show that you're passionate about what you're talking about in your working life. And I'm really grateful. The number of people who've sort of said nice things to me as I've been on my way out of the door this week. A lot of people have said thank you for your passion and thank you for genuinely caring, and that means as much to me as anything, right? But the main point there is, if you want to deliver brilliant presentations or brilliant speeches or whatever it might be, you need to check those three boxes. So logos, ethos, pathos, and the top-down thinking really, or pyramid thinking, kind of fits into that logos piece. So that is, how do you structure an argument? How do you come up with a really singular, compelling governing thought, and how do you organize your ideas underneath that so that kind of everything's in the right place? It's literally think of it as a pyramid, and at its most straightforward, it's like if somebody gave you 25 things to remember, it's hard to remember 25 things, but if you group them up into themes and then put some kind of governing thought over the top of that explains what those three things are, all of a sudden your brain's going to start to remember stuff better. So you'll always know someone that's trained in top-down thinking because they'll probably try and tell you three things, and at the end they'll tell you the three things that they told you.
I have heard that before. It's like if you're structuring a speech, put into three parts at the start, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
Correct. And that's a big part of top-down thinking. And the way that it flowed through in a PA would be, that it was a great way to challenge people's communications via a shared framework. So rather than, I don't like that, or I think you should do it like this, it would be, can you just clarify for me what your governing thought here is? Or what's the complication? Or are you sure that's part of the situation? Or can you tell me what your key line is here, right? So just shared framework gives you the ability to have non-confrontational feedback conversations based on a shared belief around how you're going to deliver great quality communications. And that takes the sting out of stuff a lot as well, and takes opinion out of things to some degree. If you're both trying to get to the same place and you're trying to deliver on a fundamental of the organizational culture.
Yeah, kind of sounds like, if you were to put into the context of a plumber and he's trying to find a leak in a pipe and he's tapping different parts of the pipe until he eventually finds a part that's broken. It kind of sounds like that allows you to find out where different bits are broken.
Yeah, it could be a little bit like that. Some of it depends on whether you're trying to deliver a message that prompts a how or a why question. So if you're trying to explain something, if you're trying to convince somebody of a particular argument, you might want to get to a governing thought that prompts a why question, and that gives you a key line that's three big pillars of your argument. It says, Why? Because A, B, and C, and then you've got the detail under each of those.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes it's a how question. So how do I, if you're gonna have an argument around, or if you're trying to construct an argument around how to fix something, you might say the best way to fix your pipe is X, and the implied question is all right, tell me, how do I actually do that, right? And you can actually then lay out the argument underneath that. So that's not a great analogy, but the point is, just to reiterate, it's kind of really getting into the hearts and minds of your audience. So you're presenting it in a way that is respectful of the position that they're starting from. It's about compelling arguments, and it's about structuring your ideas. And I've found it becomes my reference point. If I'm struggling and I've got a whole bunch of stuff floating around in my head, sometimes the best way for me to work out what I'm doing will be to start from, okay, what's the question in the mind of the reader? Write down a whole bunch of stuff that's just the current situation, and then try to find something that feels like a burning platform or a complication that gets me to a point where I can say, okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Because you'll all have read emails that go on for 7 paragraphs until they get to the point that they actually want to make. That's why all my emails have got bullet points in them, because it's very rare that I write paragraphs. It's normally I want this is the message and these are the reasons, or this is the message and this is the the supporting evidence or whatever.
Yep. They are much easier emails to receive if they've got bullet points. It's like, oh, good. I know this is going to be simple.
Never read a Danny email and think, oh, this is so long. Nice enough.
Sometimes they get long, but hopefully they're still clear. And I think that's the most important thing, is to make sure that you're being really clear with your comms. And what I would say is, at PA, it was very much part of the culture, and it was quite rigorous, and it was almost at times a battle of who's applying this to the best degree. I don't think you need to go to that degree. If you're just having a think about structuring your argument really well and making the main thing, it sounds really simple, but sometimes it gets hidden in the detail. And it's actually, that's what you were trying to say. Why didn't you just put that at the top?
No, brilliant. That's super interesting. We'll have to. I'm keen to listen to that back and look at some of that.
It probably needs to be structured better.
Yeah. Did you go with the pyramid scheme there?
No, I've already forgotten enough questions for today.
Can you touch on you and your routines and how you go about your work essentially? Are there any sort of routines and habits that you really build into your day?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question as you were kind enough to give it to me in advance. Look, one of the bad things in life is caring too much about what other people think of you. But I'm a little bit prone to that, and I use it to my advantage in my work, I think, in the sense that it matters to me what people think professionally. It matters to me that they think I'm conscientious, that I'm smart, that I'm thoughtful, that I care, and that I add value to the organisations and partnerships that I work on. So that, I think, reflecting on the pandemic is something that really kept me going. There were plenty of excuses that you could make around not working as hard or not contributing, and there were times when sport had stopped, for example, when it was really unclear what the hell I should be doing. I had to work that out for myself and suggest the best ways to add value. I wrote a whole bunch of articles at the time that sit on our content hub at Deakin, all focused on sport, which helped me to feel like I could still drive some engagement with Deakin and position us around sport, even when there was nothing happening on the field of play. So I don't think I have too many rigid kind of habits, or other than I am very disciplined with my exercise. My mental health requires it. So I'm very disciplined. I exercise at least sort of probably 4 or 5 times a week as a minimum. And I still miss running terribly, but professionally, I don't have too many sort of rigid habits, other than just a sense that if you keep your own standards high, if the driver, in my case, happens to be caring far too much what people think of me, I use that to my advantage, I think, and try to make sure that I keep my standards high, because no one else is going to No one else can enforce your own standards.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you're in control of, I think.
It's a great motivator to do good work.
It is. It's not. I genuinely don't think it's the right motivator, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to others. But I'm, years old now, and I don't know that I can. I don't know that I can change that too much. I'm mindful of it, and I try not to get too caught up in it. But my own standards are in part driven by a care factor about my reputation and professionally, and that's why I suppose this week's been kind of heartwarming for me, because some of the messages that people put on my LinkedIn page and some of the things that people have said to me have been just what I would want to hear, and I would want to be known for those things. So.
And just out of interest, you morning or evening exerciser?
Morning, always, morning.
When's the alarm going off in the morning?
Oh, well, all our stuff is in a shipping container at the moment. So even my Zwift is not available. So 6:15 spin classes at the moment. So the alarm's going off about 5:20, 5:30, something like that. It's that, which isn't popular, but as I said, although the cat alarm goes off about 10 minutes before that anyway. So, I do my exercise in the morning, and for a long time I ran a lot, and I think Ruben's got about 15 seconds on me over the half marathon. But
I'd love to see you guys go head to head.
Yeah, so would I, because it'd mean I'd be able to run properly again. But no, it was pretty cool actually hearing from Ruben when he managed to break that 84-minute barrier for the half. It's a big one, and I remember how it felt personally as well. So I used to, even on a standard morning, I would run sort of 10Ks before work, and at my peak I was running sort of 70 or 80Ks, and ran Melbourne Marathon and sort of really enjoy it. I just loved my running, and it was an amazing way to explore a new city as well. Like I got to know Melbourne through my rec running group and some running for South Melbourne and in its Athletics Victoria's XCR series. That was an amazing way to get to know a new city, and I saw bits of Melbourne that I wouldn't have done otherwise. So I'm a morning person, and that was the longest answer in the history of the world.
No,
love hearing that stuff.
We love, what's next for you? You're moving to Singapore. It's a bit hot over there. How are you going to exercise?
It'll be. I'm going to be in the pool. Sorry, I'm trying to find a way to say that without sounding like a you-know-what. A bit of swimming. Zwift has been my thing since I sort of had to stop running. So I tore my cartilage playing football when I was 20, and my knee's done really, really well for me. But I'm told that it's probably got limited mileage left. So I still run occasionally, but only for... only when I sort of separated from other forms of exercise. So it'll be Zwift and probably a bit of swimming, and I go to the gym. Not that you can tell, but that'll be my fitness regime. And I don't think it's the worst place to be. A bit vulnerable on things. My mental health does require me to exercise and eat well, and that's what I do, and that's something that I've sort of embedded in my life for the last probably dozen years, and it's made a massive difference. Although I do miss having the odd cigarette.
All the way back at St Andrews College, I'm sure.
Is that St Andrews? I've been thinking about it. It's been ticking over my head. Is that
for an hour?
The golf course?
Yes. Yeah. So University of St Andrews is literally in the town of St Andrews. So it's not like a campus university. All the buildings are very much part of the town. So there's a quad, a bit like sort of the Oxbridge style. It's actually in a couple of the rankings. It's sort of number one and I think number two, or in two of the different major rankings for UK universities at the moment.
That explains how you turned out.
Well, it's certainly not known for me going there. It's known as being the home of golf, and also for Prince William attending there. So that's what it's famous for. For a bunch of years there, it was sort of the news was sort of couple that met in St Andrews having a baby or getting married, and I'm just like, that's just my Facebook feed normally. But I've got a little bit more hair than Prince William, maybe not too much, but he is actually younger than me. So
no. Very good. Well, we know where to go if we ever want to round at St Andrews. Might get in touch with you. last question, and that's what's some final advice for people wanting to progress in the sports industry?
I'll probably touch on a couple of things that we've slightly referenced. You know, sport is big, it's varied, it's nuanced, and it means different things to different people. So I think it's really important to find what you're passionate about. So is that, you know, to be highly commercial and be a revenue generator so that you can help a sport that you love with the money, the influence that money can create in terms of driving participation, whatever? Is it about helping athletes to be the best that they can be as athletes and as human beings? Is it about, you know, creating a healthier, more active community, country, world? Is it about delivering incredible fan experiences? Is it about using sport as a catalyst for social change? Like, there's no right answer to that. You've got to find it in yourself. And look, the other thing I feel like I should say, just because of my own perspective on sport, like, sport can be an incredible force for good in the world, but the flip side of that is it's being used in some pretty nefarious ways by some pretty ordinary regimes in a, you know, very politicized kind of nationalistic and individualistic world that we start to feel more and more. So for me, it's not sport at any cost. It's sport in the right areas and in the right ways. There are big parts of the sport industry that I would just rather not be part of. And I was asked that in a conversation sort of relating to what I might do in Singapore recently, and someone said, "Is there anywhere you wouldn't work or anybody that you wouldn't work for?" And I gave them an answer, and I had a view on that. My view isn't everybody's, and everybody's entitled to their opinions on it. But I think sometimes there's just an assumption that because it's sport, it's good, and I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably the most philosophic final answer we've ever had to that question, which is amazing, because I think a lot of people who would have got to this stage would be able to feel the overwhelming sense of passion that you have for what you do and genuine care that you have for what you do. And I think for those people who are just starting off their career, you're a great example of how far that can take you and to enjoy a long career at the same time if you follow that as well. So, Danny, thank you very much for coming in here. I know we certainly wouldn't have made it to this place without your initial support. And it's been such a joy to work with you over the last couple of years, and we're very sad to see you go. I can still vividly remember having coffee in South Yarra with you and you saying, "We want to give you a little podcast, a bit of injection to help it going," and here we are 3 years later. So to be where we are now is largely thank you to you. So thank you so much for your support. You've given Ryan and I a livelihood that we absolutely love, or kickstarted the livelihood that we have now. And there's a community that's grown off the back of this podcast of over 500 people who have reached, gone out to achieve 300 plus jobs in the industry. And the impact of everything we do would probably never have got to where it is without that initial support. And that's because of you. So thank you very much for coming in.
I don't know what to say to that. More the way that you said it than anything else. I'm genuinely touched by that. Thank you. Honestly, if it hadn't been me, it would have been someone else. What you're doing is fundamentally good and addresses an important gap and is making a huge difference to the industry. So if it hadn't been me and Deakin, it would have been someone else and a different brand in a different industry, or someone else from within the education sector. So I'm glad that we got there first, and I'm really glad that Deakin's been part of this journey. But the podcast is obviously only one component of what you're doing now, and I wish you both all the very best with it. And I shall probably listen to a bunch more, but maybe not this one.
I didn't think I'd get emotional, but no,
that took me by surprise.
First tear on the podcast,
probably.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's genuinely. I'm a bit lost for words on that one.
This is what happens, Danny, when you come in. When you're finally on, it brings tears out. So.
I was like, I want to say something nice, but I didn't think that would happen.
Oh, well, you're the editorial team. You can work out whether it's thanks in or not.
Yeah, edit the footage.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Guys, it's time now for the People's segment, Ask SportsGrad, where every week we answer a question from the SportsGrad community. If you'd like to ask a question first, become a SportsGrad member at sportsgrad.com.au/community, and then you can add your question to the channel named Ask SportsGrad. Rubes, this one comes from Jake. This is, how do I change industry or department?
Great question.
A simple but good question.
Yes, and a lot of people out there looking to make the change into sport. So listen up if this is you. But firstly, one problem that people usually face when trying to make a change, particularly in industry change, is that they focus on their industry experience rather than their skills. So for example, if you're coming from engineering into sport, some people say, well, I've only got engineering experience, therefore I've got nothing to offer sport. That's completely false. What you need to do is focus on the skills, because the skills that you've used in engineering can help you in sport. So there's probably 4 steps to this. The first one is to actually identify your skills. So if your experience is only in engineering, literally go through and just dot point all the different skills that you possess. Could be communication, could be problem solving, could be project management, could be anything. Go through and make a list of all the skills that you possess. Next thing you want to do is identify the skills of the job that you want to go for and make a list of all them. And so now you're looking at a page that's got your skills and the skills of the job that you want. Then you simply just want to connect the dots. And if you want to draw this out, like literally, like, you know those old games in primary school where you like have to draw a line between the words that match?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You can literally do that to be like, all right, now I can see in front of me how my skills match the skills in another industry or in another job. So you want to try and find the commonalities between your current role and the role that you really want. Then once you've found, all right, you've got 8 skills, the job has got 8 skills, and you've got 4 in the middle that match, you want to focus on those 4 skills that match and articulate your value. So flesh out those 4 skills into a STAR response. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result, and start to practice how you can tell a really compelling example of where you've demonstrated that skill before, such as where have you used communication effectively, where have you used project management really effectively. And so that way, the people who are in the sports industry or, you know, hiring for that new role that you want, they can clearly see how your skills could be effective in their new environment. So at the end of the day, when you're trying to sell yourself into a new role, new industry, new department, at the end of the day, it's just a test of your self-awareness. And what you want to do is you want to get to a point where you know your career so well that when a role pops up, you can easily identify how your skills can enhance the role. So focus on the skills and do a bit of matchmaking.
Yeah, I love it. I always get the question from people who, for example, they want to get into partnerships, but they've only ever worked in, you know, completely different areas, you know, and at the end of the day, it's like, well, can you build relationships, or have you built relationships over the years? Have you completed a project? Like they're all transferable skills to what you'd be doing in partnerships. So yes, I don't have partnerships experience, but that's okay, because there's so many skills that you've done in your job that relate directly to it. So don't just think about it as your title and that experience. There's so many other things you can add. Yeah,
100%. And if you want an example of someone who's done this really, really well, go back to episode 171 with David Pryles, who is a CEO of Hockey Australia. He spent 15 years as an investment banker, then tried to change into sport, got rejected several times before he got an in as a commercial development manager at Cricket Victoria. And the way he did this, as he says in his episode, is he presented to them a list of his networks, because his network was incredibly important and valuable, and his transferable skills. And he put that into a document that they didn't ask for, which helped him stand out. Yeah. So he's a real life example of someone who's done it to get in and then has excelled to CEO level once he got there.
Absolute legend, David Pryles is as well, so definitely have a look at that. If you'd like to ask a question or ask our friends in sport a question, just sign up and become a SportsGrad member. Each week we jump on a Q&A where it's an open floor for you to ask us or industry professionals any of your questions. This Wednesday we've got a speed networking night coming up, so if you want to meet a few other people in sport, feel free to come along and get involved in that one. All these sessions are recorded as well, so when you access our community, you get over 50 hours of content ready and raring to go just for you. Find us on LinkedIn, plus give us some love or a rating if you enjoy the show. Subscribe on Apple or follow on Spotify. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Hey guys, one last thing before you go. If you'd enjoy a quick email from us each Friday on all the latest job openings, networking events, Q&As with industry professionals and latest podcast episodes, then subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Head to our website www.sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe. There's also a link in our show notes to join.